This is potentially the biggest discovery, or maybe not so big, in the development of the theories on Roman archery of the 6th century specifically. So there's a textile that portrays something akin to the motifs found in Sassanid artwork about a mounted archer, usually of noble status, and he's hunting a lion or maybe a mythical creature, but he's portrayed doing horse archery. This isn't the only time that we see it in Roman artwork. We see it in a mosaic as well, which has also been very influential in helping inform our opinions of how Roman archery may possibly work. What you're actually seeing is that, unlike in the mosaic, the textile is portraying a bow grip. And we do see this bow grip in Sassanid artwork as well. So there's always a possibility that because this textile was also found in Syria around the 6th century, then that motif is basically just kind of copying over. And so what they're seeing is that they see somebody utilizing the specific kind of bow grasp and is just copying that. But the problem is that this also translates very well to real life. You can absolutely use a technique like this, and we actually do see it in real life practices. Kyudo or kyujutsu, for example, we usually see a lot of people utilize this sort of grip where the index finger is lifted off. It's almost pointing. Now, on one hand, on a surface level, this is meant for aiming, so you can point your finger in this direction. But what it actually looks like is that the person, which we also see in real life archery, is actually curling their index finger. So the reality is that it's more like they're pointing their knuckle. So it seems like it could be used for aiming. You know, it's a technique to help aim because it goes parallel with your arrow, and that makes sense. But I think the actual reality is that it's meant to be a more minimalistic grip on the bow, because it's an idea of letting the bow do the work. The less you grip the bow is the less you interfere with it, in a sense, because you really want your bow to be doing the work. When you release, the bow itself is doing the work. When you hold it and are trying to add any sort of movement to it, unless you're very well trained and very good in your timing, then more than likely you're going to interfere with the arrow flight, the accuracy, and it might wobble when it goes. But just like in Japanese archery, which, don't quote me entirely on this, I'm not trained in Japanese archery, but I have kind of seen it, and based on my practices, my self-taught ways, this is kind of how I know it. It's that the less you interfere with your bow, the more it actually works. So the less you put the work in, the more it works, I guess you can say. There's a bit of irony to it. But in this case, what you're trying to do is, number one advantage is that you can easily grab it with the thumb and the index finger because it's already open. So you can already grab that. See, there you go. Control it until you got the thumb draw. And then because your thumb is off there, you're not gripping very tightly with these fingers. What you actually end up doing is you're just kind of gripping it very menially. And you're not going to lose control of it when you release, because then you're still kind of controlling it. You just kind of have a soft grasp in this case. But what this does, and I'll show you right here, right now, is that this allows, when the string releases and it snaps back into place, the momentum actually then pushes the bow kind of in a rotational movement almost. But basically the idea is that it's not interfering with the bow, it's allowing the bow to do the work, and it naturally just goes with it. So it works exactly as it's supposed to, and the arrow ends up flying straight. Albeit these are warbow arrows that I got, so they don't really bend or wobble or anything, as long as you put in appropriate technique, so they're much more forgiving. But also, a little trick, if you get warbow arrows once, they'll last you for a really long time on even 45-pound bows like this one, nonetheless. All I have to do is just pull the bow, let it push into my palm, So I can just let it push into my palm about right here without having to necessarily put in a lot of effort. Let's go. You're not actively trying to push it out, you know, with a twist or with a push down. That's not those are what Archery is, but you're just kind of allowing the bow to kind of rotate due to the momentum. That's not really Archery, not how I know it. Archery itself is a very specific focus and accentuation of your wrist movement. You know, it's something where you actually try to make a wrist movement, whereas compared to what I did, it just naturally happened because the momentum kind of made it so. So it's kind of like you need to empty your mind and just kind of let the bow do the work for you. The only work you do is you just grip the string. And again, you have a passive hold. So in this case, the textile actually portrays something kind of along these lines. So something even more akin to the Japanese. So they portray something along these lines. I think that the pinky may be up like this. I could be wrong, you know, there's little details that they may not really capture. But it's something kind of along these lines where it's held with these two fingers. And the reason why is because it kind of translates to what I'm saying, is that when you hold it like this, you don't actually have to actively press on the thumb. All it does is that by the virtue of this being put right where it is, the fingers are just naturally holding the thumb in place without having to really try to press onto it. And so therefore, when you actually release, it's very smooth because you're not going from a very tight hold to then a completely relaxed position. It's relaxed to relaxed. It translates very well. It's very easy to facilitate. And it's the same with using the bow grasp. It's relaxed to relaxed. All right. So in this case, even if it's a heavy bow, it still works exactly the same. So in this case, as long as you have those scapula retracting and expanding, what ends up happening is this just kind of goes around because of the loose hold. So again, you're just allowing the bow to do the work. Now, there's an idea around historical artwork being unreliable. Okay, yeah, it is. But at the same time, when there's something that can be replicated, such as this one, and it has very favorable effects, especially when we also have written sources that can support it, we also have relations to real life practices that do also support it. So it kind of goes well with the sort of universal truth. Can we really throw it aside and say that it's just somebody's imagination? Well, maybe or maybe not. This one's a little bit complex because, again, this idea that it could just be somebody looking at the motifs of Sassanid Persia and then just utilizing it in Syria. But at the same time, that effect also goes for real life practices as well. They see practices done with archery, and people who do archery across the border will also take inspiration from that. So it can go both ways. And the whole point of my practice is that I consider all outcomes. It's not really a conservative point of view to conclude that it's impossible, right? It's a very radical view, but it's not a conservative view. A conservative view to me is saying that we can neither confirm nor deny this, but we're not going to rule it out. And I guess a liberal viewpoint of interpreting artwork in history as a source is more along the lines of, we can neither confirm or deny it, but we will also ask the questions, is it possible? We'll entertain the idea. And so I think it's there is a discussion to be had on whether or not we can trust most artwork. I'd say, like in many cases, is mostly down to technical errors, because they didn't exactly have the art standards that we would have now, or the art standards that they would have had in the Renaissance, where they have a high attention to detail and making sure that everything is correct. But in everything, they are people who lived in their time. They are people who attempted to portray reality to some degree, even if there was also elements of fantasy to it. So I have the same conservative mindset that some people would say that they have when it comes to interpreting historical sources, that I don't come to solid conclusions. But a lot of people like to be extremely cynical about what they see, and I'm just not that kind of person. I have to pull out all stops. I can't rule anything out, and that's what this practice is that if there's something that I cannot rule out, then I'm not going to rule it out, because at this point a lot of it is guesswork based on interpreting sources as much as I can. In fact, most of the sources we have are written sources, and in fact I would even say that written sources lie to you often more so than pictures can, because pictures, they seem to be pretty honest about whether they're lying. Written word has the ability to purvey itself as though it were true. It can be perfectly clear like it's a lie. Just as an example, the Arab archer of the 1500s said that this four-finger draw is Greek and it's stupid and arrogant and all that stuff, and he also talks really bad about Turks. The thing is that 2 centuries prior, a person named Taibuga mentioned that same exact draw with the same exact terminology, which has Arab terminology to it, and said it was ancient Arab, not Greek. And first, so who's telling the truth here? Is it Taibuga or the Moroccan author? I think the Moroccan author is not truthing here, and he's just trying to purvey Arab superiority, especially with how he writes the entire thing. But that's just one example of me saying that words lie to you all the time. So people look at artwork and say that, oh, this lies to you. But the thing is that words lie to you more so than pictures can. So why does nobody ever refer to that? Just because it's a manual doesn't mean that it's telling the truth all the time. And I have to consider that I can't rule out the possibility that maybe Procopius is lying about the Romans. Maybe the Romans didn't know jack shit about archery, and he's just saying they did because maybe he's jealous of the Huns or something. Maybe he's jealous of the Persians. I don't know. But we also have multiple sources that can also back that up. We also have the Strategicon that also instructs the horse archer primarily. So there was a growing culture of horse archery surrounding it. If we can look at these sources, even if they're pictographic, replicate them and have pretty favorable outcomes while also appealing to the sources and a universal truth, then can we really be so cynical about it at that point? It's really, I guess, just a matter of perspective. And I know that I'm kind of trying to grasp at straws here, but that's also most of historical work. A lot of ancient history can lie to you, but the whole point of history is that we're going by what is recorded. That's what history is, and that even includes pictures. We still use pictures in those cases because they're pieces of art made in their time. If there's anything, they certainly know more than we do about how archery worked for them.